Oh.
This meeting is being recorded.
So Virginia is going to start with our announcements.
Okay. I think one of the biggest and most exciting announcement to make is that our book, which I should be holding up a copy of, someone has a copy of our book, hold it up, please, is now available on Audible. I have already purchased mine. I didn't even use my credits on Audible. I bought it outright. It's available. It's read out loud by a wonderful young actress, Sharon, who has done a fantastic job, and there's lovely background music thanks to Paul Meredith. And you can get it at Amazon or you can get it at Audible, and it's wonderful. So thank you everybody for all your efforts, including Sharon and Paul, because we have this terrific additional contribution to the raising of our cultural awareness.
Yeah, a lot of people like to just listen to books too, rather than, while they're doing other things. So it makes it more accessible.
And it's
I love listening to books while I'm driving, and I have daughters that live in Virginia and Boston, so I do a lot of driving, long hours of driving. So I love it. Yeah.
really fun to listen to, especially when there is a dialogue between the therapist and the client because she uses different voices. So
Oh,
you feel
neat.
like
Oh,
you're,
I'm going to have to
feel like you're
get the
in a room.
Audible copy. Oh, that's makes it very rich, I would think. Yeah.
Yeah.
She did a great job for us. We're really happy.
Mm.
Okay. Other announcements? I can't think of any. What's our March gathering?
February is going to be a social gathering.
Social gathering, members only, including affiliates and student members. Okay, you're also part of the members only, and it's free, and it's just we're going to talk about the work that we're doing and the energy of the work that we're doing, and what gets you excited about the work, and what is a struggle, what is a challenge, and including if you have guys, I've never encountered this. Do you have any idea what I should do with this? So bring those questions as well, because we're all going to be there for each other, and it's just going to be a very nice family gathering. Hope to see everybody there. And I don't know, again, I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, March is going to come when it comes. Does anybody have any announcements they would like to make, a class or a workshop you're offering that you would like to share with us at this time? Please raise your hand and let us know. Emil.
Yeah, it's not offered within the HTH. Is that okay anyway? Yeah. Okay. So we're offering a series of, we started to offer a series of inner work that follows the Byron Katie approach. Some of you may know Byron Katie. And so she has this book, I Need Your Love, Is That True? With very powerful exercises in addition to her method of inquiry, which is basically to go within and ask yourself some very specific questions on a situation that has happened. So I'm happy to put this on the chat, but we're very excited because we're basically giving it as a series of workshops. The first one is, if you're still looking for your self-love and approval of others, well, this is going to be a workshop that might help with that. And then it will evolve into other things. So very excited about that. And thanks for the opportunity to share.
What are the dates?
Oh, it starts in the opportune time of Valentine week. Yes. I'll put it in the chat in case anybody.
Email in the chat, Emil, so
Yeah.
people can know how to contact you, okay?
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'd just like to, okay.
Go ahead, Georgina.
I'd just like to say that every Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time, I offer a meditation, a half-hour meditation for free, and people from around the world come in. And sometimes there's 15, 20 people, and sometimes there's 50 or 80 people, depending on the subject. It's really a form of guided group hypnosis. Some of it's spiritual, some of it's practical, but every week it's there at noon. And just contact me, Georgina, at georginacannon.com if you want information on that.
Excellent. Thank you. Carol?
Yes, I'd like to invite everybody to come to the Journey into Quantum Consciousness. I took a little detour from HCH and I did the Quantum Consciousness training with Peter Smith. Kim has also done it. I don't know if anyone else here who has done it. Oh yeah, Peter. And so he's allowed me to do a group session. We're tweaking it a little bit. Think of it as quantum consciousness light and for the group setting, but it will be February the 13th, and I'll post a link to that in the chat box. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Kim. Kim.
Yeah, I'm going to be through HCH offering a quantum consciousness practitioner course on 2 consecutive Sundays, the 16th and the 23rd. And we'll be using a journey through other realms from the quantum consciousness book as kind of a guidepost. And then we'll actually be not only learning about quantum physics tied to the spirituality of quantum consciousness, but doing practicum so that by the end of that second full day, you'll be able to move on down the road and hold some space for moving into other realities and offering that to clients. And that's the 16th and 23rd. And then one more little thing, just a monthly gathering using quantum physics as kind of the underlying placeholder. Because I don't know, anybody that knows me know I'm kind of a little bit of a freak on the subject, and especially how much quantum physics just envelops and ties in so nicely with the spiritual space. So that gathering is on the 3rd Wednesday of the month for a couple of hours, where we take one of those principles and see the beautiful spiritual enfoldment that exists within it and around it, because isn't it all the same thing of interconnection anyway? Thank you.
That's cool. You're saying the 16th and the 23rd of
February.
Thank you. Okay. All right. All right. Great. Anybody else? Well, I'm going to make a quick announcement. I'm offering a workshop on the 9th of February. It's a past life regression workshop, and we're going to go experience a previous lifetime. Since it's February and it's close to the 14th, we're going to experience a lifetime where you were in a family of love, where you experienced family love. So that's what that one's going to be. And I will put my email on the chat. If anyone wants to find out more about it, you can email me. Any other before I hand it over to Holly? Okay, Holly.
I would like to introduce our newest affiliate member, Colin, who just today became an affiliate. And maybe you could just say a little bit about your background, Colin, and what attracted you to our organization.
I have to be, if I'm entirely honest, it was Georgina. I trained under hypnotism with Georgina, and I'm now a retired professor of biology, so I'm sort of following other interests now. So that's why I'm here.
Welcome, welcome. And Yuki, you want to share a little hello?
Yeah, hello. My name is Uki MacIsaac. I'm mostly an intuitive reader, so I don't like the word psychic, but a lot of people know better what that is. And I've been doing that for almost 40 years. And in hypnotherapy, I specialize on inner child, past life regression, and soul retrieval. So those are my interests, and based also on a near-death experience I've had long ago. And so I'm very grateful to be doing my life's work, my life's purpose. And I'm happy to join this group because I feel there's almost more to learn. And I think after a while of doing this, I can get sort of in a groove, and so all of you and your experiences can help me bring some fresh wind into that.
Welcome. Is there anyone else here for the first time today that'd like to say hi? Okay, well, we're happy to have all of you here. Thank you for coming. So I'm going to have the pleasure of introducing my colleague, Dianne Seaman, and she and I were chatting ahead of most of you arriving, addressing the fact that she is one of the first people to be board certified with IBRT. She's been tried and true. And for quite a while, she was training people in past life regression. But underneath all of her work has always been a passion for astrology, which she integrates beautifully into regression therapy. So she's going to be presenting an overview of the tendencies for 2025 based on the cosmos. And we've got our fingers crossed she's going to give us some positive, hopeful news, right?
Oh, gosh, yes. I'm going to mute myself.
So welcome, Diana. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing this with us today.
Yeah, no pressure. Anyway, well, I imagine that I have that with the people here tonight, there's quite a diverse exposure to astrology, some very little, some a lot. So I'm just going to kind of talk. My job is to translate astrology into English. It's not to teach you astrology speak. And so the charts I sent to Holly, I actually did them by hand because I wrote out, you know, the planet in English and the sign in English, because if you'd see the symbols, it would make no sense to those who have no exposure to it. So first, I want to introduce you to some concepts that I think are really important and not all that well known, especially to the general public. I'm pretty adamant that astrology is not about fortune telling or even forecasting. When I looked at the name of this, I went, I must have been busy when we decided the name, because I would have preferred it to be, you know, a review of the astrological themes and energies for 2025. The reason you really can't predict, for one basic reason. Every planetary energy is like an archetypal energy. And here's the basic core concept that, if you hear nothing else, is so important. Each energy, like let's take Mars, has a wide range of expression, from destructive to very positive, constructive. So the negative Mars we're seeing a lot in our culture right now. The negative Mars is combative, bullying, violence, you know, just as negative as you can get, really. And an FYI, Donald Trump has Mars very prominent in his chart in Leo. And that is why he leads with this bullying combativeness. It's just who he is. So the negative expression of Mars is that negative violence, bullying, combativeness. The positive expression of Mars would be your star athlete, somebody with incredible physical skill, physical stamina. You know, somebody who's hiked all the top peaks in the world, and that's their passion. You know, courage is a very positive expression of Mars. And later on, I want to talk about the bishop in the National Cathedral that has been everywhere in the news this week and is just, I think, touching something profound in the collective. I want to talk about her chart. And she has a signature that is very courageous in her chart. And I knew it had to be there for her to do what she did. So now in between the two, like ultimate negative and the ultimate positive, there's a whole wide range of, you know, in between, you know, there's a range of possibilities is what I want you to take from this. So the reason you can't really forecast or predict is there is no determining which possibility is going to express in an individual life or in the culture. Okay. You can just talk about the realm of possibilities, the range of possibilities, the themes that are prominent, and it's certainly worthwhile, but you can't specifically say on X day this is going to happen. I do remember though, there are a few, like, wasn't there like 2 days where there were like the New Orleans, there were 2 violent incidents. Well, there's been so many in this country, but in the last 3 or 4 months, there was 2 within a day or 2. One was, I think, the New Orleans car ramming into the crowd, and the other was some car bomb going off out in Colorado. Or anybody remember the specifics? When I looked at
It was a Cybertruck in LA.
Thank you, the Cybertruck in LA. It's all starting to blur because unfortunately there's so many. But I know they happen pretty close together within a day or 2. And I did look at the astrology, and there was a Mars, which is potential for violence in its negative form, and Pluto, which is kind of magnifies the potential for violence. I mean, Pluto is almost like the eruption of everything dark and unsettled. And then you add it to Mars, and you have this kind of violent acting out in society of a collective energy that just erupts. That's very Mars Pluto. So, each planet has its pluses and minuses, and I'm going to talk a lot about Neptune tonight in connection with what's going on in the United States chart and the transit of Neptune in 2025, the shift of energies of Neptune. So we'll talk about that. So Holly, do you want to put up the US chart for everybody? As I said, I wrote out everything in English so you could follow. What I think is most significant is that America has basically been going through a Pluto return for the first time since its forming on July 4th, 1776, with the signing of the Declaration of Independence. That seems to be the accepted date to use for the birth of the US, was when the Declaration of Independence was signed in Philadelphia. So that's the one I used. Pluto is down at the bottom left. Let's see, right here. It's at 27 degrees Capricorn. Now, Pluto has many meanings, but Pluto, in its challenging realm for us individually and collectively, Pluto is almost like the shadow side. And the United States has had its Pluto, transiting Pluto was sitting right on its Pluto when it was formed, which only happens over 200 years because it moves so slowly. Now, we all know that the last 8 years or so have been really difficult. And it's almost like this underbelly of American culture. And I'm going to admit, I don't like Trump at all. So if I sound really biased, I just think he's a very destructive force. But he has given permission for this dark side of American culture, which might have been hidden in the recesses, like, the Proud Boys and all these militant groups and all the resurgence of racism coming out and this obsession with power over women emerging from the right. It's almost like everything that was hidden, but it was like underground, hidden and underground. And when Pluto triggered this, and it really started Pluto moves very slowly, so it's been hovering for the last 8 years. It was exact in 22 for a year and a half till fall of 23. But because it moves so slowly, it was within what they call orb, meaning it was like even when it's 2 or 3 degrees away, it creates a field of energy that activates this theme of flushing out the toxicity, flushing out everything that was hidden. Suddenly, I think Trump just modeled permission for these groups to be accepted and to come out of the woodwork in a lot of ways. You know, that march in Charlottesville, you know, where they were marching, I guess that was 4 or 5 years ago, where Trump said there were good people on both sides and they were, you know, marching, basically white supremacists marching through Charlottesville, Virginia. That is the kind of Plutonian flushing out all these, in a way, toxic forces that are now very visible, very dominant. And if I had an individual come to me with this kind of Pluto influence going on in their lives currently, the main theme is everything that and I would say to them is everything you've suppressed, repressed, is going to push up like a volcano and you can't run from it anymore. So I think what we've been seeing in the country, and in a way, Trump's an agent of this energy being flushed out. But the energy, he didn't cause it. It's been sitting there dormant forever, you know, and in a way, this country, I know Marianne Williamson has talked about this country legacy has a lot of dark sides. You know, it was founded on the economy of slavery. The Europeans moved in and basically committed genocide on the indigenous people. And it was one big land grab power game by the white Europeans on the indigenous people and using the Black population as their economic base till, you know, I think over half of Americans' life from the colonial days to now, it was over half of Americans' era. Slavery was legal. So we are seeing the constant racial tensions in this country as a result of that. You know, we're seeing the white supremacists rear up and feeling very threatened that they had dominance for so many centuries and now they're being threatened. It's in an individual life, it's sort of when the shit hits the fan. And I think we can all agree the shit has hit the fan in America. And it seems to be getting progressively worse. I can't tell you what's going to happen. I haven't a clue. I will go into what the energies are this year. One energy in particular, I'll go into in a minute, really is the primary signature of its things are unpredictable as hell, basically. So, but, you know, if we apply what an individual's challenge is with a Pluto transit, it is to heal at the core, alchemically transmute energy at the core, flush out everything that was repressed, buried, flush out the dark side, no longer be in denial about the dark side, integrate it with the light, transmute energy, and heal very deeply at the core. Now that sounds all lovely, but it's for an individual, it's a very challenging, intense initiation. Pluto transits are. For an individual, a lot of times that's when past life material will surface during a Pluto transit. I don't know how to quite translate that into the collective energy of the US, except to look at the collective legacy of, I think, slavery and the genocide of indigenous populations. in a way, America does not have a lot of good karma based on that, in my opinion. And so we're seeing this, real, in a way, the threat of the death of our democracy itself. If that's not Plutonian, I don't know what is. The threat of literal death of the nation as we've known it. There is no telling by the look of what the energies are, which way this is going to go. It could be that it goes into a literal death of democracy. It could be that it goes into a darkest hour before the dawn, flushing out all the shit chemically, alchemically transmuting it through a whole lot of hard work and initiations, and come out the other side, kind of a resurrection and rebirth. But there is nothing guaranteed, and I wish I could give you a guarantee, but there is none, because there is no telling which direction this energy is going to take. Okay. So the other thing that's really being impacted right now is the moon here at 27 Aquarius. And to me, that is, well, let me go quickly. Pluto in Capricorn, that is, this theme of these big corporations. Capricorn is all this big business corporate energy. And America is so, like, glutted with corporations running the show. So that's the, and America identifying as, this prosperous land of opportunity with business. That's Pluto in Capricorn. Now let's look at Moon in Aquarius. Aquarius as a sign is more like America's the big experiment. Let's merge a whole lot of various religions and races and cultures, and the whole mixing bowl, the whole immigration. Let's do the big experiment that America identifies with. It may struggle with their attitude toward immigration, but I think America has always identified as, this land where diverse number of people come, and there's these humanitarian ideals, which is Aquarius. And Aquarius is also about, let's experiment with a radical new way, especially when America was formed back in 1776. I mean, Europe was still under, kings and queens and very, very rigid hierarchical, societal structures. America, like, identified as, anybody, the rigid class lines, were seen to be less rigid in America compared to European cultures that were mired in these aristocratic, centuries-old structures. So America's ideal was always very Aquarian. Okay, there was always an Aquarian element, which is the moon in Aquarius. Its whole identity was Aquarian. Let's experiment, let's have this mixing of all these cultures, etc. Now, the thing I mentioned earlier, and this is America's moon at 27 Aquarius, right here, is being challenged, it is being triggered by a current influence, the planet Uranus. Uranus as an energy is, again, a light and a dark side. The light side of Uranus is it tends to shatter old structures that are dead and outworn, but people are clinging to. It's almost like the image of the lightning bolt that comes down and shatters an old, outworn, outlived its life purpose structure to rebuild. Okay. So this planet Uranus is triggering the moon here very, very strongly. This spring, for the first time, it's going to be exactly squaring that. And again, in winter of 2026, it's going to be hovering back and forth, activating this for all of 2025 into early 2026. And the thing that makes it impossible to predict is of any energy in astrology archetypically is Uranus is the archetypal energy that is the basic theme of Uranus is expect the unexpected. Another way Uranian energy operates is things can happen suddenly and unexpectedly. So it's almost like there is no predicting what is going to happen in this country over the next year and a half with this influence, about a year with this influence, because things could pivot very quickly. Unexpected things could happen. Uranian energy it could go from detonating all the structures of traditional democracy, and ending, and that death I talked about earlier, to the current administration with its intentions could suddenly blow up and something unexpected happen that reroute things. It's very unpredictable, but the Uranian energy tends to work suddenly and unexpectedly. So in our own lives, if you've ever had some sudden shift in your life that came out of nowhere and was very sudden and unexpected, that's Uranian energy. It often ushers us into, a radical redirection that we may not have seen coming. And we may have been clinging to the old because it was comfortable and familiar. And Uranus comes along and says, I'm going to blast you out of this like a lightning bolt. Okay. So that's a major influence all year. And all I can say is things are going to be unpredictable, very unpredictable. I wish it was, I know we all want to hear that there's light at the end of the tunnel and, the good guys are going to win. And I really don't know. Except it's going to be very unpredictable and things can pivot quickly. Now, the other energy I want to talk about is the planet Neptune up here in the US's chart. It's a 22 Virgo. Now, Neptune by transit has been opposite that really for the past, Neptune has been in Pisces since 2011 for the past 14 years. And let me talk about and activating this Neptune in the United States chart. Again, each energy has a positive and a negative. The positive Neptune is something we are all familiar with that work in this field. The positive Neptune is a receptivity to subtle non-physical energies. It's intuition, it's spiritual longing, it's attunement to the non-physical, it's attunement to the transcendent, it's the spiritual journey. And we all use our intuition in our work, and we are attuned to these non-linear, non-rational energies that we tune into. That's the positive Neptune. But the negative Neptune can be very negative. And when I tell you what the negative side is, you're going to immediately recognize its negative influence in our culture for the past 14 years. Neptune is all about lies, deception, smoke and mirrors, misinformation. Neptune is the fog rolling in. The fog rolling in so that you can't discern what is real and what isn't real. Fog rolling in metaphorically, like in a landscape, makes it very hard to get clarity. Whereas Neptune is the fog metaphor in nature, Uranus is the clear, starry night, where the stars are crystal clear and you can see every one of them and the lightning bolt coming down. So you see how different those energies are. But I think one of the things that really marks what's been going on, especially since Trump came on the scene in 2015, is deception is the name of the game. And not that politicians have always been true blue honest, except for maybe Jimmy Carter. But there's always been exaggerations and lies, but Trump has taken this to extremes where, misinformation coming out, and then from his mouth, the constant lying, and then you add to that, social media and Fox News and the whole concept that is their playbook, that if you repeat something often enough, if you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth in people's minds. That is pure destructive negative Neptune. Okay. And that has been so prominent in this country since Neptune has been triggering Neptune in America's chart. Now it is moving off, and it is going to move out of Pisces, which is that, kind of foggy realm of deception, and we can't get clear on what's true and what isn't true, into Aries, and things might get a little clearer, and that's happening. Let me get my so many different notes here. Neptune is first going to move into Aries in March, late March of this year. But it's not going to stay in Aries. It's going to move back and forth because planets, they go retrograde. So it's going to be hovering right between Aries and Pisces most of 25, and then move finally into Aries in February of 26. But when it first moves into a new sign, we get a taste of it. Okay, we get a little glimpse of it, but then it's almost like 3 steps forward, 5 steps back. We go back into the old quagmire of this fog and deception. And, I'm not saying the deception and misinformation is instantly going to stop when Neptune moves into Aries. But I think there might be a little bit, almost like the fog might potentially lift a bit. And I think a more fierceness in people wanting to cut through the misinformation, because Aries is about warrior energy and courage and taking action to cut through instead of a passivity of just kind of accepting what's handed to us, in the distortions. So that's kind of the keys of what's going on in the US's charts. I think the other thing that is so prominent, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention it, is Pluto is moving into Aquarius. And I think and it's now fully into Aquarius and won't be back into Capricorn. But I think all of us were so hopeful that when Pluto moved into Aquarius, it was going to be this, I think, the campaign by the Democrats kind of represented that dream of finally the Aquarian vision of equality and humanitarian interests with Harris and Tim, her VP. And I was right there. I thought, oh, Pluto in Aquarius is really going to support this whole new energy moving in, this whole new spirit of equality and cooperation, and I'll admit I was shattered when it didn't happen. And then I realized something, and it's important for someone to understand. When a major planet, like one of the outer transpersonal planets, that move very, very, very slowly and are all about collective human evolution, not individual evolution as much as collective, move into a new sign, it might take at least 5 years of it being in the new sign to really anchor in the whole new energetic pattern. It's not like Pluto goes into Aquarius and boom, the old drops off and the new comes in. It's more of a very long, long, long process where it may be that we are witnessing what I've heard called, and I love this image, extinction blast of the old, where the Aquarian energy is hovering deep, subtly underground right now, knowing it's going to really build its strength and merge in the next 5 years or so. But right now we have the old Capricorn energy of the white males that are not going to give up their power without a enormous fight. So we have this, I always use this analogy, yellow jackets in the fall when they know that it's cold weather coming in and they're going to die, they get really nasty. They really attack, they will sting, they will just they're pissy. They're very annoyed that their life is coming to an end. And I think if you can see this as an extinction blast, I think in a way the old order of the white male dominance that has existed for millennia can see through women gaining equality, through, more and more blacks gaining equality. They are so threatened by this that Trump is literally trying to backpedal us back to the 1950s before any of this happened, and it's almost like they're magnifying their nastiness. And the thing when I get really discouraged, and I do, and I get very frustrated, I get very angry, and I get very sad, and I run the gamut, as I'm sure we all do. The thing I try to hold on to is that deep down they are terrified because they know their reign is coming to an end. And so they are desperate to almost exaggerate everything to cling to power, to turn the clock back to the 1950s when they had exclusive power, when women had no power, when blacks had no power. I mean, look at some of Trump's orders, executive orders, undoing the advances of the past 50 years, 60 years. And their whole intent is to return to a culture of white male dominance. So if you can kind of have an ounce of compassion for them when you're not scared or angry or grieving what they're trying to destroy, all the gains they're trying to destroy, is deep down, in a way, see them as terrified little boys. Because on some level, they are. On another level, they can be outright evil. So if you can hold the tension of those two, that's a challenge, I know. But I think both are true. So that's kind of my overview, and I'm simplifying a very complex era we're in for the matter of brevity. And I want to check my time. When I don't know about you folks, but I have just been gripped. If you want to put up the other chart now, Holly, I have just been gripped by this bishop in DC who dared to speak truth to power when she very eloquently, gently, but very matter-of-factly, pretty much gave the current version of Christ's Sermon on the Mount to Donald Trump on, I guess it was Tuesday. This just exploded her into not only the national spotlight, but probably the global spotlight, because I think the entire globe is enormously anxious about the destruction that could happen with Trump being unfettered. It's not just this country, but globally. I mean, look at his imperialistic fantasies. The fact that this woman, and he's so vindictive and spiteful. I mean, anybody that challenges him is punished. She's already receiving death threats, not from him, but from his followers. So I'm very intrigued with Marianne. I guess it's Bishop Booty. And I had never heard of her. And suddenly there she is, just like, I mean, I was just blown away by her, gripped by her, fascinated by her. What immediately thought to myself, that woman's got to have a strong Mars and a lot of Aries in her chart to be able to stand up and say what she did to Donald Trump when we have been watching for past 8 years, the majority of the Republicans cowering and kowtowing, and nobody is, and just enabling him. Nobody is challenging him. She wasn't ugly, she wasn't abusive, she wasn't bullying, she wasn't confrontational, but I think she came from such a core, in a way, spiritual center that she could say it gently. And I have heard her speak. I heard her interview with Rachel Maddow, who I really like because she's just so intelligent and has such a broad perspective on things. And I was fascinated to hear her discuss with Maddow how she came to the choice to do that. Because I've heard criticism by people I'm shocked to hear criticism by that, oh, she shouldn't have done that in a church and mixing politics and so I think there's a real polarized response to her. Of course, everything in this country is polarized right now. But so I want to look at her chart as in I am feeling this woman is in a way giving us a glimmer of hope, is modeling hope, is modeling something that we are desperate for. I'll be eager to hear your comments about what words you would apply to this. She has just gripped the national imagination and is everywhere on social media, on interviews, on television. And she has a quality in her that is very pure, in my opinion. So let's look at her chart. First of all, let's talk about the courage part, because I thought this woman's got a strong Mars and Aries somewhere. Now, I didn't know her birth time because that's not available online. Wikipedia has her birth date, and I'm sure that's accurate. So when you don't know the birth time, astrologers usually use noon. And so the planets are all going to be pretty much the same place, no matter what time of day she was born. So I'm not going to talk about the ascendant, which would change. And the moon, for the first half of the day of her birthday, which is December 10th, 1959, was in Aries, and the last half of the day it would have been in Taurus. But my guess is she was born before noon. Did the chart just disappear? Oh, there it is. Here's the moon. My guess is she was born before noon because Aries is the sign that is associated with Mars. And so Aries people, the energy of Aries is, I've got to be direct and speak my truth. Not hint, like just be direct. I have to speak truth. And I have the courage to do so. That's the positive side of Aries. And Aries has a negative side, but we don't have time to go in all, the light and the dark of every sign and planet tonight. But you know how anybody who challenges Trump or calls him out sets himself up with a very dangerous target on their back. So you've got to be pretty darn gutsy to do that. So there's the moon in Aries. That would give her a lot of courage. Then I looked for her Mars. Mars is up here in Sagittarius, and she has 3 planets in Sagittarius. Up here, there we go. And Sagittarius, interestingly enough, is the sign for religious vocations. There are other meanings of Sagittarius, but Sagittarius is a sign that has to do with religion and philosophy, and she's a bishop. It's been her whole life work being in the church, being a minister in the church. So that's interesting. Now, Mars in Sagittarius alone isn't enough. Then I looked down and went, oh boy, she's got an exact Mars-Pluto square. 6-degree Virgo, 5-degree Sag. It's 90 degrees apart. Let me translate that into English. Mars is already pretty, the warrior planet, so pretty courageous. But when you blend it with Pluto, it just exponentially increases its oomph. Negatively, Mars Pluto is that violence I talked about early on with the truck exploding, and the car driving into the crowd in New Orleans. That's negative Mars Pluto. Positive Mars Pluto is, I'm just, a person in touch with their power in a good way, which is Pluto, their courage, which is Mars. And I think on some level, vibrationally, she just exudes that. Pluto is also, I think, this collective appeal she has right now. I think she is appealing to something we've been longing for. Somebody please call him out. Somebody please speak the truth to him. And her motive was not about a motive he would have about being power hungry or being dominant. Her motive was clearly as an instrument to speak for the powerless, the immigrants, the transgender community. She was going to use her strength and courage and power in a good way. Sometimes I think the word power gets bad press because we see such abuse of power in a negative way. But there's an incredible healthy power that I think she demonstrated that, she used her power of her position and even being in the church that day and giving, being the bishop that presented, the sermon, she was in a position, and I think she knew she was in a position to say what needed to be said to counter the lies that have been told over and over. Remember, I talked about the deception of negative Pisces and negative Neptune is if you repeat a lie often enough, it's believed. And this whole narrative about immigrants being criminals and destroying the country, and that's just been repeated ad nauseum by the Republicans and Trump for years now. And she just very, very calmly and quietly said, that is not true or accurate. She just blew a hole in their narrative. And it's so interesting that while not many people, she said, I heard her speak to Maddow, and she said there weren't that many people in the cathedral. But I think it's fascinating that this has just gone viral, probably all over the world, definitely all over this country, that her words are just reaching people with the truth that most immigrants are not criminals. Most immigrants are hardworking, tax-paying, contributing to our country's economy. She, in a very quiet, I don't know if y'all have heard it, it was so calm. It was not like these fundamentalist male preachers that are like ranting and railing. It was this gentle, quiet, in a way, very, I think she knew she was a voice piece for the divine. I think she knew that. I think she knew that she was an instrument. I think she knew that she was born to play this role right now in the incredible tumult that is going on in this country. And she played it very, very well. The odds of it reaching Trump and changing anything is slim to none, given his behavior and how entrenched he is in it. But I think she has provided a role model for millions of people and hope for millions of people. And I just find her fascinating. I'll be very curious to hear everybody else's reaction to her and their take on what she said. The other thing that I will just add a little tidbit as for everyone as regression therapists, there's a component in astrology called the South Node over here and the North Node over here. Everybody's got a pair. They're always in polar opposite signs. And the South Node, really, I've watched this in many, many charts for decades and in my own. The South Node really represents a quality we have developed over lifetimes. It's just so familiar to us. It's like breathing. You know, we've done it over and over that we just think this is absolute reality. And there's nothing wrong with that. It also often carries skills and abilities. So interesting enough, her South Node, which again is a quality she's developed over lifetimes and is very comfortable and familiar to her, interestingly enough, is in the sign of Aries. So how I would interpret that from a reincarnational standpoint is, as a soul, she just didn't start out this lifetime having this courage. It's very well developed in her. And her South Node, kind of indicates that. Now, we are all here to grow towards our North Node and end up integrating the two. This is not bad. This is not good. This is familiar and comfortable. We tend to get stuck there because we're comfortable doing things we're good at. This is the North Node is where we're here to grow and develop. And we sometimes go in that direction and we kind of back up because it feels awkward and uncomfortable because it's new. But life usually rewards us when we move toward our North Node because it's what we're here to do this lifetime. Our North Node is in Libra, which is the quality of, Jimmy Carter was a Libra. Jimmy Carter just had this way about him of being such a connector of people, such a peacemaker. And she's got this absolute courage and directness, which she displayed, but she also, I think, has the capacity to be in this Libra position of being tactful, being a peacemaker. And Libra is speaking for others. She wasn't just like over here in her courage saying, what about me? I need to confront you to get what I need. It was like, I'm speaking for the people, the vulnerable people, which is Libra. I'm going to use my courage to speak for those that can't speak for themselves. And that's very much her integrating the Aries, something her soul developed over lifetimes, and now coming in to really be, I think, a very, very charismatic figure in a very undramatic way. I think her energy just exudes something that is really substantial and probably developed over lifetimes. So I want to give us time. It's 8 o'clock on East Coast. Because there's a lot I tossed out here, and there's a lot going on in this country this week. My God, it's been tumultuous, I think, for many of us watching what has been going on very rapidly, day in, day out. So eager to hear questions, comments, your take on this woman. I'm just intrigued by her, and I felt just very drawn to being in the moment tonight and going with what was so prominent in the moment this week, which I think is the bishop rising to a very public prominence. And her chart also shows why this is timely. Transits to her chart show why this is her time to be thrust into the kind of national spotlight and to claim her authority. So
What struck
Welcome any
me,
questions, comments.
yeah, what struck me about her is I think, for myself, she is representing the power of the feminine.
Yes, oh, that's well put. Yes.
And that's what we're all aiming for with a true equality.
Excellent. I love that. And I did not make that connection. So thank you.
You're welcome. It just really struck me. I think that's why she's resonating globally.
Right, right. Because I think she is resonating globally. I think she has sparked something in the collective. And how fascinating, given what you've said about she represents the feminine authority and power. And who is she going up against but the ultimate abusive, toxic, masculine in Trump and his whole cohort? How fascinating. Yes, I totally agree with you. I think you nailed it. Speaks to me very strongly. And I think it is why she's resonating. So, Colin
Peter.
has his hand up.
Sorry,
Holly, do you want to take over? I'm calling on people.
I'll take over for you. Peter, I
Yeah.
saw your hand.
Because I can't keep track of who's put their hand up first. Yeah.
If I could add, I think the fact that she is within the church itself and a bishop in the church that is so masculine for millennia, that's another
Right.
key part of this too, that's coming from an unexpected quarter, if you will, to say the words that she said in the position that she was in that particular moment when Trump is there and the nation is looking to him to talk about the next 4 years. So I think it's just very, very important, as you said.
That's another, right.
Yeah, another perspective.
Right. That's another good insight coming from the traditional patriarchal church. But what's interesting is the Episcopal Church has been notoriously open to women in positions of power for quite some time. So, versus some other churches. And so while the church has been so traditionally over millennia, so patriarchal, she's in a church that has given her power and authority and her voice. It's so fascinating. This is why I think this is I wanted to bring her up because I'm enjoying every single comment so far and getting a lot more insights from what people are saying.
Colin?
Thank you. Yes, I was just wondering how you'd explain all the women that support Trump.
Oh, well, I've been pondering that. I have a theory of that, Colin. I have a theory.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a theory. I think there is an unconscious collective field of patriarchal energy. And I think women internalize it. Women internalize the rules of the patriarchy, meaning only men, like they can't vote. Even women couldn't vote for a woman president because for millennia, the patriarchal rule was only men can lead, only men are qualified. And I think there is an unconscious, huge, enormous collective field called the patriarchy that women internalize unconsciously, and they don't even know they internalize the collective messages that have been around for millennia. There are two good books I'd like to mention. One is called The Shadow King by Sidra Stone. She's a Jungian-oriented analyst in California, and she and her husband, Hal Stone, developed a wonderful therapeutic technique called voice dialogue. And they discovered that there's almost an inner patriarch in all of us that is voicing several thousand years of patriarchal rules in our unconscious. Does that make sense, Colin?
It kind of does. I was wondering whether it would be different in certain countries where the sort of women were predominant before the men.
Well, that's a load of boy. There's a lot. Yeah, that's a good question. Like a matriarchal society?
Because Ireland had a very matriarchal society, and women were in charge for years before essentially the church came.
Oh, so in the Celtic culture, you mean in the Celtic era?
Yeah, the women were, it was a very matriarchal
Well,
society.
that is interesting, Colin. I'd be what is your take in women in Ireland today as far as accepting female leadership in government and churches?
I think they're very open to it. In fact,
Okay.
the leader of one of the main parties is a woman. And
Well, that's interesting, Colin. Very interesting.
similarly in Iceland, I think it's Iceland, the prime minister was a woman. So I just wondered whether they're more pagan societies where they were much more open to women being in
I
charge.
think you've got something there, Colin. I really do think there's something very legitimate there because the collective memory that gets passed on emerged out of that Celtic pagan acceptance of women and valuing of women. And the Christian church has been so anti-women for a long, long time. Not Christ himself wasn't, but the Christian church has been anti-women. Oh God, the Catholic Church is appalling in their attitude toward women. And so, there's a whole different field in a way, Colin, of inheritance of attitudes on a very deep level. I think that's another fascinating point.
Kathy?
Thank you, Colin. That's very intriguing.
I just wanted to mention, I hope that this bishop in Washington, D.C. can work together with and reinforce. There's a new Catholic cardinal just appointed to Washington, D.C. by the Pope specifically to be pro-immigrant.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that.
Oh, yes, because this Pope understands what happened from the last Pope. He appointed a lot of conservative bishops, and they can't just be removed. He has to wait for them to retire and then replace them. And he's very aware of the problem of, that's part of how much of the Catholic Church wound up supporting Trump, whereas 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, they never would have done that. So the current Pope is doing what he can to change the trend because he's very pro-immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, that's
hopefully
promising.
That are in Washington will support each
so they're
other.
both going to be in DC. This new person's going to be in DC with, the bishop.
Yes.
Well, that would be wonderful if they can join up. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I was not aware of any of that. Are you Catholic? So you're.
Well, I am. I'm a very large-minded Catholic in the sense.
But you're familiar with what's going on in the Catholic Church.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. There's Catholic with a small c as opposed to Roman Catholic.
Got it. I've met the wide variety myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add in, this goes to the point about the 5 years with Pluto and Aquarius and what Almdia said. Actually, earlier in January, another sign, a positive sign for women, is the first time ever Pope Francis actually appointed a woman, a nun, in charge of all of the Catholic Church's religious orders.
Wow.
600,000 Catholic nuns and 129,000 Catholic priests. So I think that it might take time for sure, but that will start shaking things up also.
There's a lot of seeds being sown for this new energy. And I think it does, just like when we plant a young sapling, a tree, it takes time for it to take root and to grow. But, you're both pointing out these very promising signs, and I think it's hard for me sometimes not to get blinded by this incredible negative toxicity that's going on with Trump and his thugs. And, that just dominates the news, and it dominates sometimes what I perceive as being maybe, I forget that there's these other little subterranean seeds being sown like you both brought in. That is very promising.
Yeah, but
It's going to be an interesting to watch it all play out.
Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to acknowledge Carol. Carol Dewey?
Yes, hi. Well, two things I wanted to mention about the bishop. The way I look at her is that even more than speaking to the power of women is speaking to the power of transcendence. Her message to me rose above the duality that we are struggling with, facing, being forced to face at this particular time. And so many people take what she said and make it a dualistic thing. So it tells me we're all still in process. That's one thing that I wanted to get out of my head. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, Diane, is I know that several of the planets are coming into alignment right now, and I wondered what you had to say about that.
Well, they're really not. I mean, they're not. There's not some major conjunction. I think much too much is being made out of that, Carol, to be perfectly honest. We're going to be able to see them in a line across the sky, but they're not even in the same sign, So I think it's just more of a visual treat, and people like to exaggerate these things. That's my take. But I don't fuss over new moons and full moons either. So I have my areas that resonate with me and areas in astrology that don't. So I openly admit them. I'm sorry if that doesn't answer your question, Carol. But I'm impressed when there's some big, conjunction and a stellium of 3 or more planets together. That's not happening. It's just that we're going to be able to see them in a line across the sky if we look up at the sky at night. That's what I take from that. It's going to be more of a great celestial night show visually.
Dan?
Yeah, 6 months, even 3 months ago, I would have been beyond distraught with this result. And I am finding myself now at great peace, and realizing the other morning in that place, between sleep and awake, a woman's face appeared, an older woman, but still dark hair, not somebody I know. I wasn't thinking or dreaming of anything in particular. And she winked. And the wink felt like, hey, it's all going to be okay. Just hang in there. It's okay. It felt like that kind of a wink.
Like this all looks like XYZ on the surface, but nah, don't let surface appearances deceive you, kind of thing. Is that kind of?
Yeah.
Interesting. Fascinating.
Yeah. So it just, for some reason, I felt like I needed to share that.
I'm glad you did.
And I said, I'm at peace. I don't know. I have no idea why I am. So I am trusting it and enjoying it.
Yeah, well, I would totally accept it, and I'm a little jealous. I'm not quite there. Did the peace come after you saw this woman's face, or?
No, I was feeling the peace even before that.
Okay.
I've been feeling
you were plugged into something. That was beyond the surface appearances here, it sounds like.
I've been getting some increased kinds of messages. I haven't been looking for them. I haven't been expecting them. And they're leading me to believe that there's a greater purpose here. And I don't know that any of us are able to fully wrap our minds around it.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's going to be pretty or comfortable, but that there's a greater purpose here, and it is indeed progressing.
And you feel a peace, and you feel it's so core that you can feel peace around it. Thank
Yeah,
you. No,
I'm
thanks for
sleeping
sharing.
really well. I'm sleeping really well. It's like, what? Really? Wow.
Well, I appreciate you sharing it because I would like more peace, and you sharing it really helps. So thank you.
Good. Good.
Kathy?
I just wanted to echo that a couple days before the election on a Sunday, I started hearing in my head my mother-in-law, who's been dead over 12 years, and she struggled with anxiety and PTSD because she was in World War II, but she would try to handle it by going around saying, maybe it won't be so bad. Maybe it won't be so bad. And that's how she would relieve herself. And I just got that that's what she was also trying to tell me. It won't be so bad. And so I watch what's going on. I heard somebody say it's really good to watch it like you are watching the Divine Comedy, which was both Inferno and Paradiso. You know, Divine Comedy written on many levels, alchemically, satire, political, et cetera, et cetera. To just observe. I was just listening to an NPR report on the way home today. This guy talking about Bitcoin and Trump putting out a coin of his face and selling millions of it. You know, it's the scam artist in chief leading the scam
I
artist.
know. I mean, it is kind of like watching. If it wasn't so potentially destructive, it would be a comedy. It would be a dark comedy.
It will be destructive, but partly it will also be destructive to those who need to wake up by falling over the cliff, like lemmings over the cliff.
Who needs something extreme to wake up? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, some people certainly do. And then others, I think it's, you know, they're challenged to grow as a soul, to deal with great difficulty, like the people in the fires in LA. You know, it's just, some people are given a soul challenge to wrestle with something big. But
right. Well, that was big. When you lose your home and everything in it, that's big.
Yeah.
Samantha, your mic is on mute.
Yeah. Hi. As all of you are saying, it's been really rough watching all of this and feeling it coming and looking at Trump's chart and Kamala's chart and not seeing her winning. And it was like, then I just really started getting in touch with, what are we actually here to do? Why are we here now? And it's groups like this, it's people like us who are doing the work so that we can know that we have to show up every day and send love and healing light out into the world and not let the fear overtake us. And when you look at this atrocity going on, that's really hard to do, but that is the mastery of self and what we're all here about now. Why are we here now if not to do that? And it's the end of the Aquarian, you know, it's coming into the Aquarian age, and it takes 500 years sometimes for one sign to leave and another to totally take over. And we have been about me, and Aquarius is all about us, we, communion, brotherhood, sisterhood, coming together and feeding the world. I mean, being who we are here to be, you know, this self-mastery that we're here to do. And this is the challenge now. And it's I just never thought it would get so dark. I just thought somehow that it would be, okay, here we are. But it's like when you realize the absence of consciousness that so many people here on the planet aren't really awake. And so they deal basically in fear. And I just feel like sometimes I'm weeping for the world, and sometimes I'm, like she was saying, with the person who smiled. We just have to do our work. And it's really refreshing to hear other people saying things that you feel and believe so strongly. So thank you all. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very helpful to have this sharing. To me, I'm really getting a lot out of it. And I want to share something I heard in church on Sunday, in Tucson Episcopal Church that I go to. And it was Martin Luther King Day, and I'm in Atlanta currently. And of course, this is his home city. And so the energy is really pretty potent here around him. A Black woman minister spoke, and she said exactly what I needed to hear, because I was really beginning to feel borderline despair, like, and fighting it, like, oh, you can't sing in this. And she said, and I say this to myself a couple times a day. She said, Martin Luther King looked evil in the eye, but he refused to succumb to despair. And I repeat that to myself as often as needed. And in a way, invoke him. You know, how we can invoke these powerful spiritual, you know, people like him and Jimmy Carter and, I'm in Georgia right now, so I'm thinking about all the Georgia people. And you know, like some days I get up and I go, I don't know that I have it in me to combat this dark, like, thumping that's going on a daily basis, and not, you know, sink into despair. I don't know that I have fear as much as despair and enormous grief for the world right now. And the environment, especially, that's my thing that I can just, you know, get beyond upset about. When I saw he withdrew from the Paris agreement, climate agreement. And you know, so I think, Samantha, it's true. We are all here to, you know, try to stay as clear as we can. And we're going to go through whatever our process is. And some hours I'm at peace, and other hours I'm pissed as shit, and other hours I feel grief. You know, so I just kind of ride it. And just accept it all. And hopefully I'll arrive at peace more, a more enduring peace. You know, but you can't force that. But it's nice to hear, you know, that example of somebody that has arrived there and know it's possible. That helps. You know, and I think that comes from not a naivete, but a being in touch with something that gave you that message, you know, that there's a reason to know everything will be okay. It's a complicated time.
Georgina.
Very complicated.
Georgina. You got to get you off your mute. You're on mute.
Okay. The overwhelming feeling that I and some others have, and we don't live in the States, we live in Canada, is that of grief. It's a deep grief. A lot of people I know were crying on Tuesday, grief. And compounding that grief, I have two friends who are smart, loving, kind women, and they are Trumpers. I'm having a hard time looking at them these days. The whole thing has shifted. And the other thing that's happened is I'm getting quite resentful that all the other people that are suffering in the world are being ignored, whether it be Sudan, the Middle East, Haiti. The grief is overwhelming. And I have to rev up my engines every morning to get going. And remember, again, as you were saying, why I'm here. But that grief is profound. And the grief and disappointment of my friends, who I say are smart women and kind. And I thought I knew who they were. And they shrug it off and say things like, oh, come on, he's a smart businessman. He knows what he's doing. It's fatuous stuff. And I have no way to put it. There's no way in me that I can put this. I'm not sure which is worse, the betrayal I feel of my friends, of what they're doing and feeling and behaving in a way, or the fact that this is going on and it's a destruction beyond what I can handle. There's no way to put it. Mm-hmm. There's no pocket to put it in. This grief, so deep. That's what I wanted to say. So on that happy note, I'll leave it to other people. Yeah.
Well, I felt the same way, Georgina. I have felt if I let myself go into grief, I feel like I'd drown in it. And what you said, the phrase you just used, the destruction, is so huge that you don't know how to handle it. I've also felt that. And I've also felt just the betrayal of people I thought I knew who Trump supporters, so I can relate. And it's very, very disturbing because I just don't get it. Yeah. Anya? I can relate to everything you said.
Yeah, I was just going to share a slightly different perspective and something that I've been practicing long before the election I had something happen in my life where someone and I had a very different view on something. And I came out of it, of course, very hurt, very upset, thinking I was right, of course, at the beginning. And then as I sat with it, and that wasn't something that happened immediately, but over time, as I sat with it, it's like, I am meeting this person in this way because I feel so strongly in my views, but they also feel just as strongly in their views. And you can't meet and clash against someone. You have to allow yourself to see their humanness and to be able to really, even if you don't agree, like when I don't agree with someone, I now take the stance of what is being triggered in me that I'm so intolerant of what this other person's saying or doing. And it doesn't mean I'm ever going to agree with them, but I can get beyond this, like, I don't know. I want to say warring or clashing or butting up against, and just realizing, like, you know, as I've gone through this process, you start to see like two siblings can grow up in the same house and have very different lenses that they see their parents, because every single person has gone through something different and sees everything through their own lens and their own perspective because of everything from every other lifetime that they're bringing and everything that they're going through this lifetime. And I think the way through all of this is for us to stop seeing everything through our own lenses of this human suit that we're in, and to really just start realizing, God, you know, I don't understand their lens. I don't necessarily agree with their lens, but I can at least see that their lens is as important to them as it is, as mine is to me, and start to really try to get under that. I mean, one of the practices, and it kind of sounds silly, but for me, I've really been exploring, like, what is soul? Like, what is my soul? What is my essence? And I constantly am saying to myself, what would soul say to me right now? What would soul say? What would soul say? And it's interesting because it takes you out of the ego part of yourself and more into that part of you that truly is all that is. So I don't know, take it for what it is, but that's really like really trying to see the humanness in other people, even when, like I found, at least for me, when I don't agree with other people, it's usually from an ego perspective. I feel so strongly and I identify my Tanya, meat suit person here in this physical world with these certain beliefs that it's hard to, those beliefs make me who I am in this realm, but that's not who we are. We're soul and body. And when we can get out of that, it's, easier.
Do you use this with Trump?
I use it with everyone. It doesn't mean I don't get triggered and aggravated, but it allows me to let go of things. It allows I become happier. I don't get so aggravated. It becomes where I can be more at peace more of the time. I've also stopped watching the news. I've stopped really being on social media and really just trying to interact with people and find humanness in one another, even when we don't agree. And you find that most people are much more in alignment. Even if you were to ask them what their political views were, when you ask about certain things, they're much more in alignment with each other than they are apart. At least that's been my experience.
It sounds like Trump saying there's good people on both sides.
I'm not sure how to take that.
I wonder what it's going to be like in our next lifetimes when we do our past life regressions back to this lifetime and get that bigger perspective.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Why don't we just do it right now?
That's a great one, Holly.
Kim?
Yeah, what a great discussion. And I understand like that grief feeling. And you know what I was thinking about, Georgina, is how much this mirrors in a way, the work we do with helping people understand when, of course, when we lose someone very close to us, and especially people who aren't in any way engaged with this kind of work, how deep that grief is and how much it hurts. And we always miss that person when they're gone. But for those of us that do this kind of work, I think one of the things that makes it so much less painful is knowing that there's so much more that to all appearances, to someone who lives in a very materialistic world, it's over, they're gone, that's the end. And but that's not true. And I'm really trying to apply that lens to everything I see today. Yes, I'm seeing some behaviors that are that I don't like at all, and that come from the very wrong side. But the effect they're having in the world, it isn't true. It's being mouthed as true, and the louder you have to yell to say this is how it is, the less that truth is core to our being. And I really believe I don't have to shout and scream to speak the truth and to be in the truth and to live in the truth. The louder one has to yell and say this is it, the less they are really engulfed in it. And all of us here, we're creators, and I believe, at least in my quantum physics studies, is that that creation has even more potential and push the more energy we put behind it, whether that energy is fear or anger or grief or joy, it pushes it forward. And so my little technique is, like, I keep saying, how good can it get? So every time I read a Trump piece, then I can go and read something about the bishop and put my energy and focus on her and how good could this get. And when I read about the destruction of the planet, there are so many amazing people in the world coming up with all kinds of solutions left, right, and center. Young people are just, it's amazing. So I go and read about those, and if I can invest in something, whether it's time or money, and say, how good could this get? And put as much energy just all my energy into that and believing and holding in that space, because we can do it. We can change these things. And yes, they're awful, but there's also some amazing, wonderful things going on that every single city and neighborhood is creating every day. And that's all I'm saying, is where I'm trying to put my energy. Not that it doesn't hit me, but gosh, we've got so many more tools than other people. And I feel like we can be leaders in that, and showing people how to live with this differently and help lead our way out of it.
So it's about time to close here. Does anybody have any final comments you want to share? Well, why don't we just take a minute of silence and just feel into the energy we shared and all the wisdom that was expressed and all the questions that aren't answered. And thank our higher selves for getting us this far on the path that we could have this collaborative community that can share so openly and so deeply. And the unity that we all share in the oneness of our commitment to doing this work at this time. And it's also an opportunity for us to get rejuvenated and re-inspired by the fact that we are here at this time doing this work. And it does make a difference. We all have the privilege of seeing that, knowing that on a daily basis. One by one. Helping people remember who they truly are. And that we are all one, that we are all connected. And once we reach that awareness of the oneness, it's really hard to cause suffering in others. So we just keep plodding along and doing our work and clearing the space and getting the tools and recommitting. And along the way, not only are we dipping into some of the darkness, but we get to experience incredible light that feeds us, that supports us to keep on keeping on. So we can look forward to next month, when we'll have more opportunity for our community to share, to come together and talk about our work, our discoveries, the edges of our growth, and keep supporting each other through community. Dianne, thank you so much for bringing your expertise and your wisdom to us today.
Well, it was a real pleasure just being with the group right now. I think it's really important, and I got a lot out of it. And happy to share what I've learned in that particular arena.
And thanks to all of us for showing up. Be well.